Sometimes love breaks us in ways we don't fully understand, until someone finally explains what's been happening beneath the surface. And if you've ever loved someone who pulls away right when things feel close, or if you grew up learning that your needs were too much, this message will feel like someone finally turning on the lights in a room you've been stumbling through for years. Stay with me, because what we uncover here may reshape the way you see connection, distance, and the silent fears that guide so many avoidant patterns. There's a quiet truth most people never realize. Avoidant behavior is rarely about a lack of care. It's about learned survival. Many people with avoidant tendencies weren't taught how to receive love. They were taught how to minimize themselves to avoid disappointment. As children, they were praised for being so easy, so independent, so low maintenance. They learned that asking for comfort brought either rejection or indifference, so they numbed the hunger instead. That emotional starvation didn't disappear. It just learned to hide inside competence, silence, or self-reliance. When these individuals enter relationships, closeness feels both intoxicating and dangerous. They want connection deeply, but their nervous system reads intimacy like a threat. So they withdraw to restore a sense of safety. That retreat isn't always intentional. It's often automatic, rooted in old wiring. If I depend on you, you might disappear. If I show vulnerability, you might not care. What most partners misinterpret as coldness is actually fear wearing the armor of distance. This is why an avoidant silence can feel so brutal. It taps into the deepest wounds of anyone who longs for reassurance. But silence, for the avoidant, isn't meant to punish. It's a strategy to regulate overwhelming emotions, confusion, shame, fear of disappointing you, or fear of being seen too clearly. Many avoidants don't even fully understand what they're feeling in those moments. They just know pulling back feels safer than engaging. The paradox is that the more they care, the more threatened they often feel. When love becomes meaningful, the stakes rise. Suddenly, losing you becomes a real possibility, and the avoidant mind tries to gain control through distance. Not because they want space from you, but because they fear being consumed by the vulnerability you evoke. Another overlooked truth is how deeply avoidant individuals crave being understood without having to explain themselves. Because opening up feels dangerous, they hope their partner can just sense their needs, not realizing that this silent expectation creates emotional confusion. Their discomfort with emotional expression isn't a sign of emotional emptiness. It's the mark of someone who never had a safe environment to practice. Many avoidants carry a hidden grief, a mourning for the emotional intimacy they never learned to accept. They watch others freely ask for love, reassurance, presence, and think, why can't I do that? But shame keeps them locked in the idea that needing someone makes them weak, so they perform strength. They perform detachment. They perform competence, even while their inner world quietly aches for closeness. When conflict happens, the avoidant instinct is to shut down, not escalate. This is confusing for partners who want to talk, resolve, reconnect. But for avoidants, conflict feels like a battlefield where they're outmatched. They fear emotional intensity, not because they don't care, but because they've never learned how to move through it without feeling overwhelmed. Withdrawal becomes their solution, even when it hurts both sides. This fear also ties into a deep discomfort with dependency. Avoidant individuals often believe love must be traded for freedom, as if closeness automatically means losing themselves. They grew up watching love collapse into control, neediness, or emotional volatility. So they protect their independence with vigilance. They don't realize that healthy intimacy allows both people to stay themselves while choosing each other. Their belief is outdated, inherited from a childhood that taught them to prioritize self-preservation over connection. And yet, despite all this, avoidants love fiercely in ways that often go unnoticed. They show care through actions rather than words, remembering the details, fixing problems quietly, giving you space when you're stressed, showing up during crises. These gestures are their version of vulnerability. Their love expressed through responsibility instead of emotion. One of the most misunderstood parts of avoidant attachment is the push-pull cycle. They reach for closeness, feel the warmth, and then panic at their own openness. So they retreat, not because you did something wrong, but because the intimacy feels too real. That contradiction, wanting connection but fearing it, creates emotional whiplash for both people. Understanding this pattern doesn't excuse the harm, but it does make space for compassion, boundaries, and more conscious choices. Another layer lies in how avoidants interpret emotional needs. They often assume they're failing if they can't meet every expectation. So withdrawal becomes a way to avoid disappointing the person they love. It's not indifference, it's fear of inadequacy. Failing emotionally feels like the ultimate rejection of their worth. By stepping back, they think they're protecting the relationship from their perceived shortcomings. People rarely talk about the quiet exhaustion avoidants carry. The constant monitoring of their own vulnerability, the internal negotiations, the emotional calculations, it's draining. They want peace, not distance. But because they don't know how to balance intimacy with regulation, they choose the option that feels most manageable: space. Not realizing that space often deepens the wound for the person who cares about them. Many partners unknowingly trigger avoidant defenses by pushing harder when the avoidant pulls away. It feels intuitive to seek connection, reassurance, or explanation. But to the avoidant, that pressure feels like losing control. Their nervous system flares with urgency, and the instinct to escape intensifies. This is why healthy boundaries and regulated communication are essential. They create safety on both sides, rather than a cycle of pursuit and retreat. And here's the part many people never realize: avoidants don't actually want distance. They want emotional safety. They want to feel like they can come close without being swallowed. They want to trust that their needs won't be used against them, that their moments of vulnerability won't be met with pressure or critique. They long for connection that isn't chaotic, intimacy that doesn't demand perfection, and love that allows them to breathe. When they finally experience a relationship where openness isn't punished, something inside them slowly begins to thaw. But thawing isn't linear. For avoidance, progress often looks inconsistent: 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They open up one day, then feel exposed the next. This inconsistency doesn't reflect a lack of commitment. It reflects the gradual repatterning of a nervous system trained for decades to suppress emotional needs. To rewrite a survival strategy, the body must unlearn what once kept it safe. That process takes time, gentleness, and patience from both partners. What helps an avoidant grow is not pressure, but clarity. Not demands, but stability. When they see that emotional conversations can happen without blame. When they experience conflict handled with calm curiosity instead of volatility. When they feel that their autonomy is respected rather than threatened. They begin to relax into the relationship. Their guard lowers. Their instinct to flee quiets. They start showing parts of themselves they've hidden for years. It's crucial to understand that avoidants do feel deeply, sometimes more deeply than they know how to process. Their emotional intensity just moves inward instead of outward. They analyze instead of express. They internalize instead of share. And because no one taught them how to put feelings into words, their emotional world becomes a private maze even they struggle to navigate. This is why patience and emotional attunement matter. They create a bridge between the avoidant's inner world and the relationship they want but fear. One of the most transformative things you can offer an avoidant partner is predictable emotional safety. Not perfection, just consistency. When your tone remains steady even during disagreements, when you resist chasing and instead hold your center, when you express needs without accusation, you're teaching their nervous system something revolutionary. Closeness does not equal danger. Intimacy does not require self-erasure. Love does not demand abandoning yourself. This shift rewires their perception. Suddenly, vulnerability becomes less of a risk and more of an invitation. They start to notice how good it feels to be understood, how comforting it is to be accepted in their imperfect humanity, how freeing it is to show tenderness without fear of losing respect. And slowly they begin engaging instead of withdrawing. They start initiating conversations, offering emotional presence, and rebuilding trust in their ability to love well. But growth takes 2. Supporting an avoidant partner isn't about fixing them. It's about understanding your own patterns too. Many people who fall for avoidance carry anxious tendencies, seeking closeness to feel secure, craving reassurance, reading silence as danger. This dynamic becomes a dance of pursuit and retreat. To break the pattern, you must learn to soothe your own fears so you don't rely on their validation for emotional stability. Emotional independence doesn't weaken the bond, it strengthens it. Healthy connection with an avoidant requires boundaries. Boundaries communicate where your self-respect lives. They remind you not to abandon your needs just to maintain the relationship. And ironically, boundaries help avoidants feel safer too. They appreciate relationships where responsibilities are clear. Emotional signals are straightforward, and both partners maintain their individuality. Autonomy is part of their love language. When they see you honoring your own life, it makes them feel less pressured and more willing to show up. Another powerful shift happens when you stop personalizing their withdrawal. When you understand it as a conditioned response instead of rejection, you take back your emotional clarity. Instead of spiraling into self-blame, did I do something wrong? You can approach the situation with grounded compassion. They're overwhelmed. They'll come back when regulated. This removes the emotional volatility that often pushes avoidance further away. It creates space for reconnection rather than conflict. Over time, avoidants begin to notice the relief of being with someone who doesn't chase, doesn't criticize their pacing, and doesn't interpret their silence as hostility. This environment is healing. It allows the avoidant to practice intimacy at a pace that feels manageable. And when they feel safe enough, something beautiful happens. They begin to chase. Not with fear, but with genuine desire. Not because they're coerced, but because they finally feel free enough to choose closeness rather than run from it. The truth is, avoidants crumble not from pressure, but from understanding. When someone sees their fear and meets it with steadiness. When someone respects their space without abandoning the connection. When someone speaks with warmth rather than intensity. The avoidant finally feels seen in a way they've never experienced. Understanding disarms their defensiveness. Safety dissolves their distance. Compassion awakens their capacity for intimacy. And that's why exploring avoidant attachment isn't just about analyzing someone else's patterns. It's about expanding your own emotional wisdom, about learning how to build healthier connections grounded in regulation, clarity, and mutual respect. When you understand the psychology behind withdrawal, silence, and emotional shutdown, you stop taking it personally. And when you stop taking it personally, you create the kind of environment where transformation becomes possible. If this conversation resonated with you, if it helped you understand yourself, your partner, or someone you love, take a moment to support the work here. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who needs it. Your engagement helps these messages reach more people who are struggling in silence. And if you want more content on attachment, emotional healing, and the deeper psychology of relationships, stay connected. There's so much more we can explore together.